DNF 10%. I can't even read that review. No, baby. No. Not saying that it is without its problems and issues, because every piece of art is going to have a problem, okay? Like, let's not be dramatic. Hi everyone, welcome back. Unfortunately, I've already filmed this video today, and it did not turn out well. I just didn't feel like it was me. It didn't feel well planned. My light fell on me like 3 times. I broke my tripod right before I filmed it. Like, it was just a whole mess. So I want to try to make this a bit more structured, because I do like a good structured video. So today I'm going to be talking about 1-star reviews of books that were either like my favorite 5-star books, or books that I liked and that I kind of do want to get a perspective on, you know, people who like super dislike the book. Like Dune, for example, I ended up rating it a 4.25. Some of it was objective, some of it was subjective. Every review is going to be subjective to the person who is reading it, but I just kind of want to get some different perspectives on books that I really liked, or books that I absolutely loved, and just kind of see like what the consensus is. Do I agree with some of these things? Even though I love the book, do I agree or do I not agree? So let's figure it out together. So the first book is going to be The Hobbit from Mr. JRR Tolkien himself. I read this book when I was younger, and obviously I have a lot of nostalgia for The Lord of the Rings because I grew up watching the movies. That's just a generation I was a part of. So let's first go to this review by Love Books, which they have a very structured review. Respect that. Summary. Bilbo Baggins was a hobbit who wanted to be left alone in quiet comfort. But the wizard Gandalf came along with a band of homeless dwarves. Soon Bilbo was drawn into their quest, facing evil orcs, savage wolves, giant spiders, and worse unknown dangers. Finally, it was Bilbo, alone and unaided, who had to confront the great dragon Smaug, the terror of an entire countryside. Review. I heard a lot about the movies and had high hopes for this book. I hope you did not have high hopes based on the Hobbit movies, and that it was off of the Lord of the Rings movies. Continuing on. But it was utterly disappointing. The plot was confusing. I honestly can't remember what it was even about, so I rated this book poorly. Things I loved. The names were cute and the descriptions were pretty decent. That's okay. Things I hated. The plot was boring, the story was hard to follow, and everything just seemed foggy. I couldn't understand at any point in the book what was going on exactly. It was very frustrating, and then it often turned boring and all that. As much as it pains me to say, I'll just have to stick to the movies. So, fair. Some of this review is fair. I feel like, to me, I want to know, does this person read fantasy a lot? Do they understand kind of like what fantasy is? This is a children's fantasy book, although there is more Old English, and it was written in the 1930s or 1940s and then published later, like 1950, I think. But I mean, the summary was good. So like, what do you not get about that? Like, it's just a fun story for kids of adventure. There's no, I mean, maybe there is some deeper themes, but from what I can remember, it wasn't too deep. This is a kid's book. If there are some themes of friendship or whatever, or like of adventure, you know, sure. Other than that, I don't really remember, so I think the review is fair, but that it is very possible that maybe they don't read fantasy very often and are not used to the adventure sort of thing. I just want to screenshot all of these reviews together because it's so funny. So we have Quentin saying, horrible. I could not stand the writing and the plot was so uneventful. Sam, boring. Tanvi, this book is for you if you are a grandpa. And they have it in 2023 Poopy School. Not the Poopy School. I don't know why that was funny. Alright, let's go on to Simon's review, which is, many will think it blasphemous, but I really struggle to see why so many people adore this book and why it has almost a cult following. I know it was written for his children, and that may excuse some of the poor narrative employed across its pages. Employed? Maybe that's, I don't know. Its pages, but personally, it seemed to be as though it was written by a child also. Interesting. I find I found the incessant use of rhyming names and songs scattered throughout to be thoroughly tedious, and the liberal use of poorly executed shortcuts in storytelling to be cumbersome and quite frankly naive. I mean, it was written for children, and I can definitely agree that, like, the songs thing is definitely not for everybody. Same with in the Lord of the Rings. I know a lot of people just skip over it, and you do you, boo, if that's what you do. Instead of finishing a chapter properly, let's just have one of the main characters fall asleep / get knocked out / disappear on an errand, get imprisoned, or have the need to gather fortitude. Then either conveniently have time pass, days, weeks, months, or have them wake up after all the action has happened, thus avoiding the need to go into detail and explain events that happen. I'm all for fantasy fiction when it's done with intelligence and imagination, but this just felt like a poorly devised fairy tale that outstayed its welcome by about 200 pages. Honestly, I think that this is also fair to some degree. Of course, I don't agree with it. It's 5-star for me, so yeah. I mean, everybody's entitled to that kind of, I just still don't think that they're putting it in enough context that, like, this is a children's book, and it was written a long time ago. And, fantasy wasn't super popular then, so this was almost kind of like a fairy tale bridging over into more fantasy, so I don't know. Let me know what y'all think about that comment, because I think they have some fair points, but that they're also wrong. There are a lot of people saying it's boring. Hold on. This is dramatic. This book was almost the end of me in 8th grade. No thank you. The end of you in 8th grade? My goodness. Alright, so let's go over to the next Tolkien book, and this will be the last one. The beginning of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or the first part of the book, however you want to see it. The Fellowship of the Ring. Let's go into these 1-star reviews. I don't understand the phenomenon about the series. I find it slow, long, and boring. It's not for me. Thank you, Tim. That was very respectful of you, and I appreciate that. Alright, let's see what Zachary has to say, as he has that penguin from that art design thing, it looks like. If y'all know what I'm talking about, the digital, like, I don't know, I used to... Never mind. This book is among the most tedious books I have ever had the misfortune to read. Coming in very hot. Steaming, even. The only way that I see people can enjoy this is that people saw the Hollywood blockbuster by Peter Jackson. When people see Elijah Wood and Orlando Bloom, they feel as if they must read the book in order to fully understand the boring intricacies in order to be wise. If you are planning on reading this book, do not waste your time. There are long areas of exposition that you will glaze over, and the rest of the series relies on your assumed knowledge of these chapters. Well, I feel like it's not as bad as some fantasy can be when it comes to, like, info dumping, exposition, that kind of stuff. There's definitely, and there are some reviews in here that talk about there's a lot of walking and talking and eating. And that's true. That is very true for the entire series. It does feel a little long because of those things, just that there's a lot of walking and talking. But for me, that adds into the intensity of where the story goes. Because if the journey wasn't long, if it was only one book, I wouldn't get as attached to the characters and feel like I'm going through the journey with them. And I feel like that's important, is that you feel like you're going through the journey with these characters. So you're getting to see all of these things. Madeline said, "I'm so glad this is over." The end. Okay, alright, I think we're going to go ahead and just move on to the next part. A lot of them kind of go along the same sort of lines. So let's go to The Lies of Locke Lamora, which was one of my favorite books of last year. I was very specific, and I will be specific until the day that I die, okay? It was a 4.8 out of 5. Now, I know y'all are getting mad and y'all are ready to get your little tippity-typity fingers out there, but that is exactly how I was feeling about this book. But if, like, looking back on it now and how much I loved it, it probably honestly is a 5-star for me. Like, I was being petty at the time, but I think that it is probably a 5-star for me. I cannot. Hold on, gosh darn second. Alright, Lynn, blah blah blah, I'm a thief. Meh, DNF. Okay, so I get to be the odd man out this time. The cranky old who failed to like a wildly popular book. Okay, many of the Many of my GR friends loved this book, which was hyped as a mix between The Godfather and Ocean's 11. I have seen probably 2 of the Godfather movies and have not read, I think, Ocean's 11 a book. I have not read Ocean's 11. Continue. And that sounded great. It also sounded pretty good with a Fagin and Artful Dodger type situation. I also thought the writing was akin to Brent Weeks and China Miéville, which I have not read anything by them, but have heard a lot about. And then the rest of the book happened. I just did not care anymore about the story, the characters, and am foggy at why and how popular it is. Life's too short, too many great books to read, and I invoked my 100-page rule. It was a stretch just to get that far. I respect their opinion, but I also respectfully disagree with all that. Oh no! Oh gosh, I wish I could say this whole review, but I thought it was really funny that this one person said my enjoyment of this book was severely limited by the fact that I kind of hated every character in it. Oh gosh. I gotta say, they're not the best of people. That's just what it is. They're just not great people. I think that's the point. I remember I did read a review previously that was talking about how the time jumps can be a bit too much, and I respect that. If you don't like time jumps, this book is probably not for you. And I don't think it's a very good like beginner fantasy thing at all. Like if you haven't experienced time jumps in your books, then like this is not the first book to experience it with, because there are so many. You really have to remember like where you're at in the past, or you're gonna be flipping through them pages trying to figure out what is going on. And I mean, there's not too many characters, so I don't think it's too difficult. Like it's no Game of Thrones where you are being introduced to characters left and right in each new chapter. I feel like you slowly get introduced, and I really loved that Scott Lynch, I loved his prose, and I love that he left me on cliffhangers every freaking time I was going back into the past. There was a cliffhanger, and I feel like that's what some of these reviews like forget to mention. I mean, maybe it was just me and how much I was loving this book, but there was cliffhangers at the end of every chapter where I was thrown into the past, cliffhanger. Then I'm back in the present, and then there's a cliffhanger, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'm so glad I'm going back to the past, but now I'm on a cliffhanger, and you're just always feeling that need to keep reading. So a lot of these people who are saying, oh, well, it was too long, and it was slow, and there's a lot of exposition, there is at some points, but it really didn't bother me because I enjoyed the way that Scott Lynch made his characters so smart. And it wasn't just like, oh, they're smart from birth. It was, well, Scott Lynch did make Locke kind of a good thief from birth, but he had a good mentor, and all of the mentees, his found family, they all were smart as well because of their mentor, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah, I don't know. I could go on. So let me move on to the next book, which is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which I rated a 4.75. I read it last year and would love to continue reading her series. I just have been caught up by other things. All right. Leia says, I'm still on a quest to find fantasy books I like besides A Song of Ice and Fire. Again, this was not it. I really had to force myself through this. Such a flat character, no tension building, a paint-by-numbers world building. I really don't get all the love for this. I'm sorry, did you read the end of this book? And the tension is because you get to really care for these characters, because you get to live their life with them. DNF 10%? I can't even read that review. No, baby. No. Oh my gosh, 5%? Oh my gosh. Julia says, too slow paced, I got about halfway and nothing was really happening or grabbing my interest. Fair, honestly, if you don't want a slow fantasy that has a slow build where you're living life with these characters to help increase your empathy for them and really get to know who they are as a character, it's not for you. Anyway, the main character doesn't even have a true name. This just was not for me. I think it adds something to it, but that's me. That's me. Oh no. I just read that it was they said it was going to be their last Robin Hobb book, and I was like, no, don't do that to yourself. Don't let it be the last one. But Jana said, too boring. This was my first Hobb book and my last. It's boring and cliche, and the author chooses to write in first person, so we only get to see through the mind and eyes of Fitz. All the other characters are one-dimensional and fall flat. Disagree. The plot has been done so many times. As soon as the whisper of intrigue and subterfuge begins to show itself, it's glaringly obvious who is involved and what the outcome will be. This book is depressing. At least now I know to skip over Hobb books in the future and definitely won't continue the story. Goodbye, Fitz, you poor sod. That's unfortunate. I do not agree. I don't. I hope that this person picks up her next series, the book series that follows, because a lot of people like it a lot more. But I think you don't follow very great characters anyway when you're reading that. My camera was dying. That's so great. All right. So, main consensus of what people say is that the book is slow and that not much happens. And fair assessment, but I think her writing is beautiful and she really makes you feel like you're there. Like, you start to feel that little cold chill when you're in the freaking shed or whatever and you're reading about the winters and everything. I just feel like she does a really good job of putting you in a place and time. And you're just there and you can see it in your mind. She's very, very good writer with good prose. All right, so Fahrenheit 451. I rated this a 5-star. Really liked it. And I felt like everyone should read this book because of the way our society is right now with technology. Let's see. Oh, not the review in Arabic or Farsi or something. Wow. A lot of these are super long reviews, and I'm not trying to do that to y'all or to myself, to be honest. Wait, if you know, you know, but 1-star review, Helena says, please burn all copies of this book. I cannot. Stop telling the whole story in your review. I can't. These reviews are very, at least it's only 2% of people, I guess, which is interesting. I did want to talk about something that I had read in someone else's review that said his book was too flowery. This book is very short. It doesn't have time to be flowery, in my opinion. Because flowery, maybe he's trying to describe something else, but flowery usually describes a prose of being super descriptive and having very beautiful writing, which I think his writing is very good. It's like more on the simple side and more accessible, I think, to, you know, everybody, you know, kind of no matter your age. So, yeah, I don't know. I love someone's, like, tags is award-winning crap. Oh, man, that is wild. Yeah, a lot of these reviews are very long, so I think I'm just gonna skip on to the next one. I'm sorry, guys. Alright, so The Lightning Thief by Riordan. This was a 5 for me for what it was. Like, if I'm comparing it to epic high fantasy, no, it's not a 5. But for it being a middle grade reader, it's a 5 for me. Not saying that it is without its problems and issues, because every piece of art is going to have a problem, okay? Like, let's not be dramatic. This person said, badly written and very sexist. Evil is synonymous with ugly and fat. Girls Percy doesn't like are all described as ugly and masculine, and it is made sure that the reader knows that masculine traits in a girl or woman mean that she is evil. And you would not think it possible to turn Greek mythology into a conservative American nationalism, but Riordan managed even that. If you are looking for a book to buy a teenager, do get them something else. Most bricks are better literature than this. I will say, oh gosh, where to even start with this? I will say that I guess I didn't really think about the fact that, like, one of the girls that he really doesn't like, who is not an enemy per se, but just someone who's a bully, is masculine. But, like, to think of, like, who her father is, he's the god of war, I think. And that makes sense why she would look like that, and she just so happens to be mean. But, yeah, and then also it being in America, most of the characters being white, and also that the center of everything important is in America is also a thing. But, like, I don't know, I guess if you're in America and that's all you know. But then again, like, he could have done anything with the story. He could have had it anywhere. So, fair, I guess. I mean, and I do see a lot of comments that compare it to Harry Potter. It is, I can't say that it's not as good as Harry Potter, because they are quite different, but at the same time, Rick Riordan took so many influences from Harry Potter that it is, you can see it, and it doesn't go the same direction that Harry Potter does. So it definitely doesn't go on the same track. Oh gosh. Anna said, bruh. Alright. Bethany said, well, this was a mess. I can see why these books were popular, but my word, it is definitely written for kids. Yes. Yes, it is. The dialogue. Yes. The characters are flat. They basically do nothing throughout the book. Everything is accomplished for them, so why do they exist? The story is pretty boring. It took me a couple weeks to finish it. No comment. So I don't plan to read the rest of the books, as there are a lot, and I don't have that kind of time. Plus, as C.S. Lewis once said, a children's story which is only enjoyed by children is a bad children's story, and I completely agree. I agree with that too. I agree with that sentiment. However, I really enjoyed it because I loved the dialogue, and I loved how the characters interacted with each other, because I felt like, yeah, this feels very, very much like what a 13-year-old kid would do. I felt like Rick Riordan really was able to embody like a real 13-year-old, because he was at some point, and I felt like he really wrote Percy well. Now, well as a character in general, like fully fleshed character, I mean, it's hard to remember, and it is a children's story, so obviously it's not going to be the best, but for it to be a 13-year-old boy, yeah, and I felt like he had emotional intelligence, and he had his faults, and he had his, he had his strengths and his weaknesses, like as every character should. And it did, both of those things affected the story, as they should, as for any good character. Alright, so, next we're moving on to Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Wow, a lot of these reviews are very long. Oh wow, a review from 2007. Interesting. Alright, let's see. This is a disgrace to all purebloods. My head looked quite dashing. If only I could extend in my stay, Harry Potter. This is not over yet. That was good. Roberta, after months and months of hype, I sat down and read this book. I went into it with some hesitation, mostly because I was tired of seeing... Okay. But figured it was bound to be a very good read. Everyone I talked to said so. And I kept thinking throughout the whole thing was, dear Lord, this harlot has ripped off books of magic right down to the effing owl. I finished the book pissed off and permanently biased. How anyone can say that this woman has any talent, I say besides plagiarism, but Neil permitted her to use this idea way back when, is beyond me. She hasn't gotten an original idea floating around in her head. Well, I have no idea about the other book she's talking about, so I guess that's just beyond me. There are a lot of people that say Harry Potter is a Mary Sue character, and maybe in the first book, but I feel like her writing gets better as the books go on, for sure. And the stories get better as the books go on, for sure, in my opinion. And, yeah, not a lot of these reviews are very funny or very interesting, and some of them are super long, so... And some of them are just about the author herself, which, if you're gonna go rate a book, in my opinion, rate the book. Because there's already enough stuff on the authors themselves, in my opinion. But alright, so we're down to the last book now, and this one is going to be Dune by Frank Herbert, and I rated it a 4.25, and I really was trying to consider like what I really felt like this rating was going to be for Dune, because I felt myself really struggling to get through it. I felt like it was very long, and that it was very slow, but that it was still written well. And I feel like in a way I was trying to be a little objective about it, because I could tell that he was a good writer. Like, he has good writing. His prose is pretty good. I wouldn't be hurt if anyone said it was kind of pretentious, because yeah, I could definitely see that. And I did not care about his characters. Like, I think those are the big two things for me. And then also just maybe it was his point, but to have your reader confused for 50% of the book, only to maybe understand it for the next 50%, it just like wasn't the biggest thing for me. But I kind of mixed my objective with my subjective opinion, and landed at a 4.25. I don't know, I'm not very well versed in sci-fi, and I kind of have made it a point to try to read kind of the classics and the different genres that I read. So Lord of the Rings I've read, and then I read Dune for sci-fi. And yeah, like, there were things I liked about it and things I disliked about it. Landed at a 4.25, so I wanted to see what other people said with their 1-star reviews. Oh my gosh, what is this? With almost 1,000 likes. Amen. Said 60 pages in and then I DNF'd. World building is literally crap in this book. I wanted to read this book just in case I accidentally bumped into Timothy or Zendaya, but I really tried being that bee, but that bee was not trying to be me. Horrible, unreadable, and should be illegal. But think about it, if this book was written by a woman, I just know I'd be able to actually read it cover to cover. Never again. If this book was written by a woman, I just know I'd be able to actually read it cover to cover. I don't get that, but go off? Question mark? All right, Elizabeth in 2017. I'm so glad I finally fulfilled my half of the bet. This book was so dumb, it was a chore to get through, and I haven't even pushed past the pain period in years. People riding worms, killing their grandpas, weird names for knives, bullets, and don't forget, everyone is addicted to cinnamon. I thought it was lame. It felt really juvenile. Juvenile is one thing that I would not call this book. It is difficult to understand. But anyway, the author seemed to be trying really hard to make everything really mysterious and mythical, and all I could think of how lame it was. All blue eyes, a worm called Makers, suits where you drink your own body moisture. Disgusting. It is disgusting, but sci-fi is not meant to be glorious most of the time. I'm also annoyed that this book was read in exchange for Pride and Prejudice. Compared with a timeless classic, the book seems like a first-grade primer. Austen is a master of plot and suspense. You may not like the subject matter, admittedly, it's a little girly, but the woman can write. Herbert, not even close. Wow. I would not personally compare because they are completely different genres. I'm not interested in reading Pride and Prejudice. I'm just gonna put that out there. If y'all want to convince me to read it, maybe, but like it's not something that I'm exactly like. I'm not a big literary fiction person at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. That I'm trying to Did you read the whole book? Because that is what I want to know, because it's funny how some people say it's pretentious, and she's like, oh, it's like first grade, whatever, and she's talking about it like as a whole, and that I just can't be down with. I can't agree with that. I just can't. Oh my goodness. Tom Quinn said, Dune is a cultural keystone, so I had to read it. But I don't have to like it. Well, you really didn't have to read it either. 1 star, I do not care if it can be read as a futuristic reimagining of the Book of Exodus, or if it informed the Zeitgeist, I don't know what that means, of early nerd culture. This book is boring. Even if the action scenes are, Even the action scenes are boring. Even the cool and interesting parts of the setting are boring. Frank Herbert sure could imagine a detailed, internally consistent, unique, and symbolic world, and having read his work will certainly help me understand a few questions at trivia night. But he can't hold my attention for beans. For beans. I didn't hear about it being a futuristic reimagining of the Book of Exodus. Personally, or the whatever word, I didn't even know what he said. The book did get boring at some points though. I will not lie. There were parts where I was like, I cannot wait to be done with this book. And that's just was what it was. But I thought the concepts were really cool. I thought that he was super imaginative, and that, overall he's a good writer. Just not when it comes to characters. And I hear that in science fiction, that's kind of like the downfall of science fiction authors, is that their characters suffer for their world building and greater themes. So that is about all for today. I hope you guys liked it. Yeah, I will be going on vacation soon. I keep saying vacation. I'm not going on vacation. I'm doing a freaking competition, archery and shooting and stuff for the Warrior Games, so I will have to be doing some batch recorded content. Yeah, I hope to see you guys very soon. I also wanted to say, let's normalize not reading that fast, because I am not a fast reader at all. I've been trying to get through Game of Thrones since May 18th. It is currently June 11th, and I've read 2 volumes of One Piece, and I finished reading Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, all during that kind of time frame. So yeah, I really like to take my time and enjoy the books that I want to enjoy. So yeah, like that just is what it is, and that's why today I decided to do, kind of a fun video of some 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books, or books that I liked, or books that I just wanted some opinions on. of people who felt very, very strongly against it. So I really appreciate you guys coming and joining me today. Oh gosh. And yeah, I hope you guys have a blessed day or night or whatever time it is over there. Let me know what y'all are reading. Let me know what y'all are up to. How are you doing? All that kind of fun stuff. And yeah, I will see y'all soon.